Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and today on the show we have Dr. Joe Alton, aka Dr. Bones, and also Nurse Amy Alton, aka Nurse Amy, from the website doomandbloom.net. They are the authors of the Survival Medicine Handbook that gives you all the medical issues that you'll face in a disastrous situation and shows you strategies to keep your family healthy even in the worst time scenarios. So it's great to have them on the show, and hopefully we'll learn a lot today. So how you doing today, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy? How's the weather there in South Florida?
You know, it's funny you asked us that because today happens to be the first cold front for South Florida, and it was 48 degrees this morning when we took our walk outside. Absolutely sunny and beautiful, but cold, and tomorrow it's going to be 81.
Right, so we'll have our 12 hours of winter and back to 11 and a half months of summer.
Exactly.
Is that odd to have such a cold day like that, or do you have those here and there in the winter?
Very rarely. Generally, it is January. Unfortunately, it's not around Christmas time, which would be wonderful. It was, I think, a lovely 85 degrees on Christmas Day for us. So January, occasionally, mostly we'll get into the 60s, but we are just a warm area here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great place to live and stay outdoors, and I know that's part of remaining healthy as well. Before we get into the work that you guys are doing now, and let me say that it's great work with your Survival Medicine Handbook, and you have a medicine podcast and all these great alternative medicine articles. Can you educate the audience on exactly how you got to where you're at now, a little bit about your background, and then, of course, get into what you're doing now?
Well, I'm a medical doctor and a fellow of the American College of Surgeons and also a fellow of the American College of OBGYN. I started off early in my career delivering babies as my patient population got older, and if you're a good doctor, your patients stay with you, I sort of morphed into becoming more of a pelvic and abdominal surgeon. And I have been retired now for a few years, and Amy here is hi,
I'm a certified nurse midwife and actually an advanced registered nurse practitioner. And the reason we got into this, obviously we've talked about the area here in South Florida, is we experienced Andrew. And I'm not sure if many of your audience knew about it because, we didn't have the internet and it wasn't as popular to learn about different local news. Mostly people were worrying about world or government. So I'm not sure Andrew was as popular of a disaster as Katrina was, but we did experience, some really terrible things down here. And we, of course, being medical professionals, were involved in helping some people, and we just saw how there was a almost complete lack of care for quite a long time. And we continued to work, and we saw other things happening. There were issues with possible flu pandemics, worried about epidemics. Of course, we knew our history, and the Spanish flu of 1918 was really devastating. We didn't have the ability to transmit and transfer these viruses as quickly as we can today. So we thought, wow, if something like that happens, this could really devastate the world. And there's just been so many natural disasters, and we just sort of woke up one day and said, you know what, we need to educate the public about what to do when there's no hospital. What do you do in these situations?
Although people really don't remember Hurricane Andrew as well as Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Andrew was in 1992. Hurricane Katrina had such a devastating effect on that area, and you may think that the government had dropped the ball with regards to a national emergency response, but it kicked in, believe it or not, before the storm even hit the coast. And there were hundreds, at the time that the hurricane was hitting the coast, there were hundreds of medical teams that were converging upon the area from many different states, and they were immediately overwhelmed by the enormity of the casualties that they had to deal with. 15,000 patient visits a day over the course of the first few days. And even though the best intentions were there, and they made every effort to bring modern technology into the area and help everyone, they just couldn't reach a lot of people in time. And indeed, the one of the disaster medical assistance teams commented that they had to take some of the more seriously injured and black tag them and put them in a separate area so they could die in peace, whereas this is something that would not have been something that would have happened in a situation in which modern medical facilities and electricity, the grid was up, and normal times were in place. This is something that happens not uncommonly in a lot of different disasters, and people don't realize it. Just in the last few months, we've had floods, we've had tornadoes. Last year, we had Hurricane Sandy just about a year or so ago, and before then, I think even the year before or 2 years before that, Hurricane Irene, there were a lot of people that died unnecessarily or were injured unnecessarily simply because they were not able to access medical care, and not because of the people that are medical personnel not trying to help, but just simply that the devastation was so much that they were isolated. And so it makes sense to be medically self-reliant.
Correct. And when you look at this, you guys saw this happen time and time again with Hurricane Andrew, and then, of course, with Hurricane Katrina. And those are just, of course, the U.S.-based hurricane disasters, and also the disasters around the world, which seem to be happening more and more. You know, virtually every year there's a few major disasters that hit, various countries around the world. You saw a niche there where you guys, being actual medical professionals and not some just Joe off the street writing a book, that you could possibly help people such as myself, who's a normal Joe that could survive in a this type of situation, and people all around the world. And I'm sure there's also medical professionals that are reading your stuff as well.
That's been quite interesting. We've had a lot of ER doctors contact us, a lot of nurse practitioners and nurses, and really medical professionals across the board, anywhere from EMTs and firefighters to police officers who do get, some first aid training. And they have been very interested because those are really your frontline people. Like we were talking about, there were medical professionals that showed up for Katrina, but they were just so overwhelmed. So it's not that people don't want to help. It's just that sometimes they can't get to you. And so helping not only the medical professional to be able to take care of their own family in case of a disaster, but helping the lay people. And this book is so specific to not having that care available. And when we're trained as medical professionals, we assume we're taught, we're brought up in an environment where all of this technology, electricity, and expecting new technology and new medications to come out, pretty much every month, it is just normal. So what you have to do is you have to flip a switch, and that's very hard to do when you are educated and grow up in this environment where everything is there for you. Grocery stores are there, gas stations are there, hospitals are there. So it's been really, really helpful for people that they don't have to make the switch. They just have to read the book. Go ahead, Em.
And it's a matter of changing your entire mindset. I mean, what's the difference between normal emergency medicine or even outdoors medicine and a true survival medicine? And it is actually your goal. And the goal, what's the goal of medical personnel or anyone who encounters someone who's injured or ill in a emergency situation? I mean, their goal is very simple. It's to stabilize that ill or injured person and transfer them to the next highest medical resource as soon as they possibly can. But what about a situation, a true disaster, in which that possibility is not there? What if you have to be the end of the line with regards to your family's safety or in times of trouble? Well, this is what our focus is. Our focus is entirely assumes there's no doctor, there's no hospital, and there's no one to pass the buck to. You are the highest medical asset left to your family, to your community, and what do you do with limited medical supplies or with natural alternatives if you were responsible from beginning to end for that injury or for that illness? This is our focus, and this is what has made our book, I guess, do so well, is that no other physician and nurse or really any medical personnel are willing to talk about that, willing to think in the mindset that modern medicine is not going to be available, and it might not be available for the long term, dependent on the type of disaster that occurs.
No, I agree with a lot of what you said, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, and especially when there's a big crisis in an emergency type situation, because, I do believe and I do know that the medical professionals and people that are employed to help the people have the best intentions. But like you said, because of the crisis and the enormity of the problem, they can't help all the people. Possibly, it's just impossible. So your niche here is educating people about this, and this comes down to medical preparedness. So not only being educated and reading a book such as the Survival Medicine Handbook would be great for people such as myself to protect my 5 children and my beautiful wife in case of an emergency. It's also having these tips and these skills to do basically anything. And this is, again, medical preparedness. What else can we do out there besides, of course, reading your great book? What are things we can do in the home to be prepared for some type of disaster like that?
Even people who are consider themselves well prepared for these types of things usually are the types of folks that have some food storage, or they may have some guns and ammo to prepare for the common defense, because they believe something like that would happen, some of the civil unrest. But very few people will consider the possibility that they need medical supplies in their home. In other words, that they need some type of dedicated medical bag, let's say, that has very basic supplies that'll help you with a number of different types of injuries, a number of different types of illnesses. And part of what we do write about in our book and in our articles over on our website, doomandbloom.net, is talking about what types of materials that you actually need to be effective as a medic, so to speak, for your family or for your community and in times of trouble. And we talk about how to use it. It's not just that you should have a medical kit. I mean, we design an entire line of medical kits, but a lot of people that even get our kits, they'll put them on the top of the back of the closet somewhere on some top shelf, and they won't open up the kit and learn how to use consider how to use the various items. And this is a big mistake. I mean, there are a lot of people that may have medical kits. You may have a first aid kit of your own at home with 5 kids. By the way, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But the important thing is to know how to use it. And our books, our articles, our videos, our podcasts, they're all about how to practically use common medical supplies that you can find anywhere, that you don't have to be a doctor to get, and also how to evaluate what's in your own environment in terms of what plants might have medicinal benefit that are in your area. I mean, if you have a willow tree, for example, in your backyard, you can scrape off the outer bark and get to the green underbark, and believe it or not, that green underbark, if you tear it off into strips and make a tea out of it or even chew on it, that has aspirin in it. So it actually can function as a form of pain relief or to decrease a fever.
Wow, so that
these
would
are the
be,
types of things. Yes.
That's a natural
Go ahead,
pain
I'm so
reliever?
sorry.
That's okay. That's a natural pain reliever.
Yeah.
Is that actually what aspirin is made out of?
Yes.
It's actually where they got their idea from.
Right.
Which is cool.
Aspirin is the first commercially produced drug, I guess, or medication,
Compound, right.
a compound, and it was made entirely in the very beginning out of the green underbark of willow trees, and I believe aspen trees and poplar trees also have some of the same substance, which is called salicin.
And that seems to be a common theme that I'm finding when I look at, health alternatives and herbal medicines. It all seems like a lot of this comes from the trees and the herbs is where most of the medicines are. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies such as, I won't want to blame Bayer, but companies like that will
Exactly.
we'll get this tree or this herb, and then they mix it with 3 other foreign substances, and now they got a patent.
Right, or they just figure out the chemical compound and make it artificially.
Okay.
Once they understand the compound in that plant, if they can produce it artificially, they will, and that's how they get their patents. So they don't even necessarily use plant material for a lot of these medicines anymore. They just figure out how it's made and then do it in a lab.
Sounds like our food on the shelves these days, right?
Our monster food.
Frankenfood.
Frankenfood, right?
Yeah, and again, all of this goes along the lines of not only getting educated, Dr. Bones, you'd said, have a medical kit. Most people don't. I do, but it's basic. But you're right. What I haven't done is I haven't learned to use it. So your advice is not only read the book, not only have a medical preparedness kit with all your first aid stuff in it and then some, but also take it out and get educated on how to use it. I mean, that's just common sense that I haven't used yet.
Well, we are glad that
everyone's overwhelmed. We completely understand, Mo.
But we also are gratified that you haven't had to use it.
Yeah, that's
so that's good. But when you do, or if you ever do have to use it, hopefully not, I want you to be able to open up with confidence and go immediately to the things that you need, to know what you need and know how to apply them for whatever medical situation.
Right, and we're not talking about doing an appendectomy here. We're talking about,
the basic.
Pretty easy things, You don't have to be a surgeon. That's the point of this book, is you don't have to be a nurse practitioner or a doctor to be able to take care of someone if you have the resource and the knowledge.
Right. Our book is entirely geared for the non-medical professional. We wanted to write a book that was in absolute plain English, in language that anyone can understand, that that knows how to speak speak English, and
covers
many
topics.
over 100 different topics,
right.
Not only injuries but also chronic ailments, things like that, and all of these, as I said before, with the assumption that something has occurred that has robbed you of the ability to deal with, to be able to access rather modern medicine or modern medical facilities. So it's a book that's useful for homesteaders. We have a lot of homesteaders that use it. It's a book that's
hikers,
useful
campers,
for wilderness folk.
Trips, right?
Yep, absolutely. And
boating. We get a lot of yachters.
Right.
That's been interesting, and people who take long boat trips have been getting this book and supplies.
So it really has reached quite a broad audience.
Yes.
We have people that we had a Air Force major that was traveling to Nepal as part of some consultant thing that he was doing, and he was concerned about the availability of of modern facilities, and he wanted to know how to deal with things. And so we had a nice long correspondence with him.
I think he's still over there. He was going to be there for a year.
Yeah.
I think it was a year. He was
at least a year, I think.
Yeah, what this has shown me is that smart people and intelligent people are realizing that this is part of life, and to have this skill is really something that builds your confidence in any type of situation. And I love those examples you gave of boaters. You know, I have a friend, her name is Nancy Terrell, and her husband travel around the world in their yacht, you know, and I know that's a pretty risky thing to do, and they could run into a survival type of situation. And that's just one person that you guys had mentioned that I immediately off the top of my head go, that's a perfect book for her. And I'm sure there's other people out there. And I'm a guy that lives here in the city in Southern California, and I know that emergencies happen and crises. So being a smart and intelligent person, I want to prepare for the worst, is hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, you know, and that's exactly what you guys are saying.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just important, and I want to make sure that people understand this book. You know, I don't know how many times we can say it. It is really written in plain English, simple terms. You do not need a medical dictionary to understand what you're reading. Mind you, we could have written medical textbook type books, but that's not going to help the person who, you know, is a secretary in a law office help her child who cut his leg and a hurricane just happened. You know, we wanted this to be very easy to understand. So although it's a large book, it's a heavy book. It weighs a little over 2 pounds. The chapters are not excessively long. You can read them, you know, if you have a specific thing you want to read about, you can read about it in just a short few minutes if you want a specific topic. So we're not trying to overwhelm people with
and they could use it as
excessive information. We wanted to give them what they need to know. Yeah, go ahead.
No, they could use it as like a reference type of book. You know, I have like specific.
Exactly.
I have some questions I want to ask, and I know a lot of this will probably be in your book and is on your website. Again, you know, I want to get a little bit educated, and I know there's people out there that might want to, you know, they have some questions. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and if you can give me little tidbits, I would really appreciate it. What is the best diet that you guys have found? And I know this doesn't deal with survival, but to me it does, to remain healthy, either before a survival situation or in a survival situation.
So you want me to rewrite the food pyramid, huh?
No.
Hold on. That was a joke. Well, obviously, well, I mean, I'm not going to say obviously, but if anyone has seen my YouTube videos, they'll see that I do organic gardening. And so one of the first things that I would do is absolutely try and get the cleanest food possible. And by clean, that not only means, you know, no hormones, no pesticides, getting your grass-fed beef. I mean, really think about where your food is sourced from. What are they doing to your food during the growing process? What's happening to it? And now we're having to deal with all of this GMO stuff. And, you know, the food industry wants to convince us that it's absolutely exactly the same thing. You know, there's no difference. But even identical twins have some differences, okay? We know that when they're tweaking these genetic things that they're doing, there's probably going to be something down the line. So eliminate all of this thing. Just eat the purest, freshest foods. If you can grow some of your food, even in patios. You know, I have a pretty large container garden, and it's all around my pool. I don't have 5 acres, but I'm doing the best I can. And when I go to the grocery store, I'm very conscious about what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my mouth, and what I'm purchasing. So clean living. Look at your water. Find out if there's fluoride in your water. Think about taking showers. I have a purifier on my filter to get out the chlorine and yeah, for my shower, because you absorb things. Go ahead. You want to say something?
I wanted to talk a little bit about diet. Remember that diet is the same diet is not always. Of course, if you follow the basics that Nurse Amy just mentioned, I mean, you can't go wrong. But if you have a specific issue, sometimes you have to adjust the way your diet is. For example, let's say if you have low thyroid levels, and you should probably avoid certain foods that depress thyroid function, like cauliflower, or broccoli, spinach, and cabbage. These types of things slow down your thyroid, and so these are things that most people don't know that they maybe should avoid if they are hypothyroid. Actually, the National Institute of Health actually has a specific diet for people, for example, that have hypertension, and it focuses on encouraging fish, poultry, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, while lowering consumption of red meat and sugar base, a lot of things that have sugar in them. So these are the types of things that you have to understand, is that you may have to tweak your diet somewhat based upon a particular medical condition.
Yeah, and these medical conditions or this diet, when you get into a health survival type scenario, also come into play as well. So, I know there's a lot of people out there, when they have their survival kit set up, they got their medical kit, they got their Survival Medicine Handbook and everything all ready to go. The food plays an important part of this, and what I'm finding is a lot of people are buying foods that they would never buy normally and eat when they're healthy, but they buy them and put them in their kits. Is that okay to eat for a month or so? Do you recommend that, or do you recommend just as much healthy food in their kit as they do have in their fridge and their cupboards today?
You know what I'm seeing, Mo, is a trend towards having healthier food storage. When I started buying my food storage, it was loaded with salt and fat and lots of carbs. You didn't have a lot of protein. So it was really meant for you to burn energy, but it was not for long term. Definitely would cause health problems. I'm seeing more organic food storage. I'm also seeing gluten-free for people who have issues with gluten, which could be a significant portion of our population. They're doing studies now showing that, a lot of humans have difficulty digesting gluten, and it can cause a lot of different health problems for people. So thankfully, I'm seeing a lot more healthier food storage. It's going to be more expensive, so you're not going to be able to accumulate it as fast. But think about the quality of the food, and if you had to eat the cheap stuff with the high carbs and the high salt, what that would do to your health over time. So it definitely is worth the little bit of money. And of course, as there's more competition for those healthier food storage containers, it's going to drop the price. So, I hope to see more competition in that area so people can store the healthier foods.
Our mission is to put I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Bones.
Okay, our mission is essentially to put a medic in every family and in every mutual assistance group for any disaster. And part of your duties as medic is to be in charge of making sure that your people, your family, has a healthy diet. So it's not just medical supplies, but you should, as the family medic, you should make sure that you are putting away food storage for disasters that are going to keep your people healthy as well. And so, and I think people are getting the message with regards to that, and we're seeing a lot healthier long-term food storage than we saw in the past.
Yeah, no, and I agree with both of what you had said. And a simple way to make it where it's not so expensive and you're throwing food away is just to rotate that food, and people need to be on top of it. So if you do buy a organic food supply that's going to be in your survival kit and it has a shelf expiration date, you need to be on top of that and have that on your calendar. And if it's food you already eat, you just rotate it into your normal weekly diet, and then you just replace it with brand new food with a longer shelf life, and you just keep doing that. And it's just remaining proactive. Just like when I bought my medical kit and I didn't learn how to use it. I didn't do step B, and that might cause problems for me down the road. So you better believe what I'm going to do now this week is I'm going to take that medical kit out on top of, I haven't bought your book yet, to be honest with you, but I'm going to buy it, and I don't buy many books because I go broke doing so because I interview so many people. But it's something I want to have in my library because I don't have any type of survival books like that. So it makes complete sense, from having healthy food in your fridge and in your cupboards today to also have it in your survival kit. Okay.
What a great idea. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to go to the next question.
I was just saying, what a great idea, Mo, that you have is really, really good advice, is to not only rotate the food out, but just have a journal or a log of when the food came in and when it's time to get more food. It just makes good financial sense, and to use the food that you have stored, and it makes just perfect sense to make sure that that's the kind of food that you want your family to be eating at, even in normal times.
Definitely. And to the next question, to give some people tidbits out there on the great information that you share, what are some of the best alternative medicines someone can have in their kits for illness and injury? I know I don't want you to give them all, but if you can give a couple good ideas that people could have.
Well, I think, just trying to talk a little about general natural medicines is you need to consider essential oils. And the reason that I want you to consider essential oils as part of your storage is that it would be very hard in a survival situation to actually produce enough plant material to extract these essential oils. They're so concentrated. Sometimes there's pounds and pounds of plant material. Let's just take lavender, for example, to just get a few drops. And so if you're focused on growing food, which of course we may have to if it's long term, despite as much food storage as you can put away, you're still going to have to supplement with some fresh food. You can't just get away with eating food storage. It's not good. It's not healthy. We already talked about that. So you're going to need to be focusing on growing food, which means you can't focus on the herbs. And so getting these oils, which, some people say that they last a very long time. They have found essential oils in Egyptian tombs, little bits of it. And it was still there. It's like honey, raw unprocessed honey, which is another natural substance that I definitely recommend people store, could last a very long time in the proper storage. If I put it outside in my car in South Florida in the summer, my essential oil is probably not going to be as long for storage as it would be if it was in my air-conditioned home. So this is one thing you should think about. And some basic oils would be definitely lavender and tea tree would be two of my top. Peppermint oil is really good. But there are just some really wonderful oils. A clove oil would be the other one that I would definitely recommend. The other thing is if you can get started on an herbal garden, you won't have to worry about storing dried herbs. You can actually have your own. So you should think about planting an herbal garden, and there's all kinds of wonderful things. A lot of the herbal medicines are actually things that we use for flavoring, like thyme and rosemary. Those are really wonderful for medicine. Other things you could think about storing, there are herbal tinctures. Again, if they're stored properly, they could last a very long time, although they're alcohol-based, so it just depends on how you're storing them. You must have them in a dark bottle in a cool area. Some other things are herbal salves. You should learn how to make these things. And with your herbal garden, you don't necessarily have to process them into an oil or a salve. You can make teas, which is very simple. Pretty much everyone knows how to make tea. Yeah, and if you have the herbal garden, go ahead.
Yeah, on those oils, I think there's a delay, and that's what's causing the problem in our communication here.
No problem.
Okay,
no problem.
On those oils, your reasoning there is we don't need to, of course, develop our own oils because there's companies out there that are creating it. And as you said, it takes a lot to make, from tea tree oil to peppermint oil and so forth, is to buy some bottles of this and have it in our kit and then maybe supplement the oils with a little herbal garden and, of course, your vegetable garden, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
And think about things that we normally eat that can be used as antibiotics. There's a lot of wonderful things, and just two of them off the top of my head is ginger and garlic. If you have the ability to grow ginger and garlic, you have really powerful antibacterials and antivirals. Really good stuff. So just those two things would be wonderful. I have problems growing garlic down here. I can grow ginger really well. So it just depends on your growing zone.
Gotcha. No, those are some great tips. I really appreciate that. And let's get into a couple disaster scenarios before we end the interview. I have two questions here. One would deal with the extreme cold weather that a lot of people are having here in the U.S. and across the world. What are some of the best ways to avoid hypothermia?
Well, to prevent, first off, the best way to avoid it is an ounce of prevention. And I think the best way to remember is to simply remember the acronym COLD, C-O-L-D. Now, C stands for cover. You should protect your head by wearing a hat. This is going to prevent body heat from escaping from your head, which is actually, you'd be surprised how much a part of your surface area of your skin is attached to your head. And
get a good hat, a wool hat.
Right. And now, instead of using gloves to cover your hands, you should use mittens, which will allow your fingers to actually touch each other and allow you to conserve heat in a much better way. So these are some ways that you can protect yourself by C, covering. O is overexertion. Now, you want to avoid activities that cause you to sweat a lot in cold weather, because cold weather causes your body to lose heat very, very quickly. And if you have wet, sweaty clothing, man, that accelerates the process. So rest whenever necessary. Use rest periods to sort of self-assess yourself for cold-related changes, not just generally, but, I mean, look at your fingertips. Make sure that, that your fingertips aren't becoming numb or changing color, things like that. You want to pay, of course. Remember, if you're going to be out in the cold, you should probably not be alone, especially if you're going to be doing winter hikes and things like that. Oh, and always pay careful attention to the status of the other people in your hiking party, or any elderly, especially elderly or juvenile members of your group.
And that means just calling out their names and making sure that they answer appropriately. Hey, Ted, are you okay over there? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. All right, let's just keep going. You want to make sure that you maintain that communication with everybody in a group if you're outdoors. And that's even if you're just shoveling snow. If you're out there with your son, call his name out every once in a while. Make sure he's coherent.
Now, going on, L, C-O-L, L is for layering. Of course, you want to have loose-fitting, lightweight clothing in layers that would allow you to be well insulated. And you want to use clothing that's made of tightly woven, water-repellent material, because that's going to help you against the wind. I mean, the wind chill is a major way that people wind up getting hypothermic, because if the wind chill factor is 5 degrees, even if the temperature is 30 degrees, you're losing heat from your body as if it were 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, wool, silk inner layers allow you to hold body heat a little better than cotton does. There are some synthetic materials, Gore-Tex, things like that. They work very well. And as I said before, cover the head and, of course, your hands and feet. Make sure they're well covered. Now, the last part of cold, C-O-L-D, is D. That's dry. Keep as dry as you can. Get out of your wet clothing as soon as you can. If you find yourself sweating or getting wet, because just remember, it's very easy for snow to get into gloves and boots. This is something that happens if you're going to be out in the snow. You almost can't avoid it. So, pay particular attention to your hands and feet.
Make sure you have a nice fire to get to.
Right. So this is one.
Dry your boots and your gloves and get warm.
Now, another thing that, besides COLD, one thing that I want people to know, and this is this widely held myth. You've seen those photos probably of St. Bernards in the Alps helping lost mountaineers with a big cask of brandy around their neck, right?
Yep.
Well, guess what? That is the absolute last thing that you would want to give somebody that's hypothermic, because alcohol causes your blood vessels to expand, and when your blood vessels expand, you lose heat more quickly.
Let me ask you this. The first thing that came to, I've lived in the mountains, and what I've noticed too, because I used to be a drinker myself, and when I go to the mountains, I start to notice the red faces on the people buying alcohol after they're done working at the ski slopes. They're actually killing themselves slowly by doing this.
Well, exactly. Why are their faces getting red? Because the blood vessels just under the skin, the little blood vessels called capillaries, are expanding. So that's why they have that red look, and also that's why they're losing heat more rapidly.
Right.
Wow, and it's interesting because the light bulb that went on top of my head was I usually only see this in the cold areas. And, of course, you see this in the warmer areas, but not as much. Every single person who was drinking, they looked like they, of course, drank for a while, had that red to them. And the other people who were not drinking and they were getting their water and their organic vegetables, they looked fine. So it just makes common sense. But it's also something people need to watch, because there's a lot of people who drink in the cold.
Oh boy,
well,
yeah, because it gives you a warm, you get a sort of warm feeling, but but you're not really getting warm.
The other danger is making mental mistakes. It's actually thinking that you're dressed warmly enough to go on a hike, or just doing dangerous things outside because you're not thinking straight. So you can make bad decisions when you have too much alcohol, that's for sure.
Now, once you've actually found someone who is hypothermic, and any person that is not conscious, for example, if you take one thing away from this, is if somebody is not conscious, they are hypothermic until proven otherwise if you found them in cold weather. So you got to get the person out of the cold into a warm, dry location. At the very least, shield them from the cold and wind. If you can't get them inside, take off their wet clothing. As I mentioned before, you got to monitor their breathing, make sure that they're okay with regards to that. And don't forget that even if you're not the warm and cuddly type, you should share body heat with this person. So, what you need to do is just get skin to skin with this person, cover yourselves with blankets, and you will be able to rewarm them and get them out of their hypothermic state. Don't give warm fluids unless the person is totally awake, because if not, it could go down the wrong pipe, and that would be a big issue. If you are not in a warm area but can at least put together some warm compresses, make sure they're dry, and put them where they'll do the most good, which is where the blood vessels run closest to the skin. This will if you do that in the area of the neck or the groin, the armpits, then this will most effectively transfer heat into the body core where it's most needed. But avoid employing direct heat like heat lamps, things like that, because remember, in a lot of these people, the skin is somewhat damaged, and you may cause significant burns.
Wow, that's some great, valuable advice. Thank you for giving that. And everything you said just makes perfect sense, but the way you put it in the cold acronym and that makes it simple for the non-medical professionals out there, and that just shows how good you guys are at teaching people. And I love Nurse Amy, me having kids, you talking about, talking to your kids and having them respond and to practice and to remember that when you call their name to answer you right away, because I know in the East right now, on the East Coast, they're having, I think, 8 to 10 foot snowdrifts. So if I got a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that's only 3 foot tall, they could get lost out there in the snow. So that's something great that people could use right away. So thank you for that. And the last question I have would deal with more of the hurricane type situation that seems to be more common around the world. You had mentioned, of course, Hurricane Andrew, then Hurricane Katrina, then the other hurricanes that have hit the Indonesian islands and so forth. What is the best thing to do when you're caught in a flood?
Well, when you're caught in a flood, this is one of the biggest issues that you're going to have to deal with, is to make sure that you have the ability to get. This is going to sound very unusual, but you have to be sure that you have the ability to get to clean water to hydrate yourself. Flood waters, when waters flood over, they flood over into everything. And so what happens is you wind up having this big giant soup of contaminated fluids. And you can wind up having, in places where there are floods, they wind up having some of the worst epidemics. For example, after the earthquake in Haiti, they had areas that were flooded and the water was contaminated, and they wound up having terrible epidemics of cholera and typhus. And some people wound up dying as a result, even with modern medical teams being flown into the area. So that's one of the main things that's very, 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 very important.
Also, do not go outside. There are probably electric lines down that you can't see, and you don't know if you're going to get a lethal dose of electricity and shock. So don't leave your house. That's one of the most important things. Stay in a safe place. If you can stay in your home, stay there. Do not drive. Do not try to walk through water. And don't leave your house.
And, of course, if you have your medical kit and everything there, you're ready to go. And, of course, what Dr. Bones had said, having an adequate supply of water. And if you're any kind of prepper worth your salt out there, you do have that. And if you know what you're doing, you actually have distilled water on hand. Do you agree with that water tip?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important. There's many different ways that you can purify water. There are systems, there are tablets, there's, from simple filtration that you can build yourself with, T-shirts and sand and charcoal to fancy equipment, that can cost hundreds or thousands of dollars sometimes. So just have some way, even if you're just boiling it and filtering it through a T-shirt. I mean, that's the minimum, and you can go on from there. But make sure that your water is clean, because you do not want to be sick from water contamination in a situation like a flood where you absolutely can't get help and get some IV fluids.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Let's finish off with all the contact details. And I know you guys do your own podcast, and me being a great podcast fan, and I listen to some of them as well, I think it's great, and other people out there might be interested in it. How often do you do it, and where can people find your podcast?
We try to make things simple for people. We have all that information on our website at doomandbloom.net. We actually have a podcast page. So instead of having to go to Blog Talk and go to our actual channel, which is blogtalk.com/survival medicine, you can just find the podcast. We try to update them within a couple of days of putting them on Blog Talk. We do them weekly. I think we've hit about 150 total of podcasts that we've done. We've been doing it for over 3 years, so we're taking out some of the vacation. So weekly for over 3 years. We enjoy it. We have a lot of fun. We both do some topics usually in the shows. So anyway, we make that easy. You can find that. Our Twitter is @PrepperShow. Again, that is on our website. Our Facebook is facebook.com/doomandbloom.
Right. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll get a notification of when a new podcast is up, which is usually every Saturday. Of course, we have a video channel at DR Bones Podcast on YouTube, DR Bones Podcast channel, and we have a lot of different videos there. And what other things we have? Oh, of course, we have you could see our entire line of medical kits over at our store at store.doomandbloom.net. Now, we freely publish lists of all of the items in each one of our kits, which each one is made for a different purpose and is a different size. And I want to say this, I can't say this more strongly, we don't care if you buy any of our kits. What we want you to have is the items that are in them. So get them however way you can, or whatever way you can, but go ahead and look up our items, our different kits, and see what the contents are, and go ahead and put together your own kit.
Yeah, and you guys doing this for so long, I'm sure that you've developed your kits where you have a direct line, wholesale line, possibly with these medical suppliers, where even if they were to get it on their own, it would cost even more or similar. So you basically put it all together for them, and you have it there. So I love the way you guys do things because giving away free ideas and content to people, such as your podcast, the articles, the contents in your medical kits, is to gain trust. And that's what you guys are doing. 3 years, 150 podcasts, books, articles, everything. So it's great. And you guys are actually you're making a living doing this too, and helping people.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome.
It's our passion. We're doing it night and day. I would actually like to make an announcement of something we did today, Mo. Okay. You have an exclusive on this.
Awesome.
We have refused for 2 years since we put out our first book to actually put out a Kindle version. Today, not just probably an hour before we started this interview, we pushed the button to publish the Kindle. It will be 12 hours until it's available. Our hope is there's a new program. This is why we did it. There's a new program called Matchbook. And what they do is if you have purchased our book, which obviously it's been available for 2 years, but if you've purchased any book for the past 20 years, and we're specifically talking about our book, and you have an Amazon account, they know that you bought that book, you can purchase the Kindle version of our book for $2.99.
Wow. That's a great deal. And the audience out there, the Gnostic Warrior audience, I want to let you know I normally don't push books, or, it sounds like this might have been kind of a commercial type kind of thing. And everybody I have on is usually an author, and I don't talk so much about buying the book. And the reason why I'm pushing this personally is I feel that every single person listening to this podcast, whether they're a normal Joe, they have a family, they are in another country, no matter where you are, I think every single person should have this book. And I've never said that.
Oh, well, thank you, Mo. I appreciate it.
And I haven't read it yet. But listen, I'm good at picking out people. I've seen your work over the last few years. You can go to Amazon, the listeners that are listening to this right now, and you could see all the 5-star ratings. They have 84 customer reviews, and they're all pretty much 5 stars. You don't see that. You might see 10 ratings on the typical book, and 4 or 5 stars, and the rest are 2 or 3. So
is the Kindle book up yet? Because we just pushed the button. Sometimes they're faster. Do you see it up yet?
I don't see it up yet.
Not yet. Okay.
But, I mean, again, that's an awesome thing to know, and I thank you for giving me that exclusive. So
I'm telling you, literally, like just before we started this interview, we have been tossing this around. And again, the reason we did this is because Amazon has a brand new program. We want people to have the book. If your internet is down, or you have no electricity, or your Kindle's busted, our information is no good if you don't have it in a book. So we never wanted to just be able to give people the Kindle, but since they have this new program, anyone who's bought the book can get this Kindle. So you can have both. You can read it on the airplane when there's not a disaster, but if there is one, you have the book, which is our most important goal, is for everyone to just have the knowledge. We're not hiding anything. Honestly, Mo, most of our information, probably 99.9%, is on our website. But if you don't have it in a book and you can't get to the website, it's no good to you. And what we've done is wasted and useless.
It is, and you got to have this on your bookshelf. And one more little tidbit I want to throw at you guys, being the authors, and then of course the audience out there, is when I look at books, I also look at another thing. I look at the used books that are for sale. You want to know how many are for sale right now? 0. So good luck finding a used book, because everybody's keeping it. All right.
Well, there was one for $999, which I thought was interesting. I said, "What is this person on drugs or something?" There's Amazon, and there was one, I don't know, I forget the name of the bookstore. They had one for sale for $999.
Classic. Maybe that was signed by you guys or something.
Or maybe they sold it.
Well, they only have to sell one.
Maybe they sold
There you go.
That was hilarious.
Well, again, thank you for your time, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. It was a great pleasure talking to you. And again, for the Gnostic Warrior audience, to find all their work, go to it's doomandbloom.net.
Yes, you got it.
Okay,
it's hard not to say gloom. I understand.
All right, cool. Again, thanks for your time, and take care, the both of you.
Thank you, Mo, very much.